As Donald Trump gets ready to be sworn in, dozens of Democrats, they're getting ready to skip town and skip the whole thing. We're going to tell you about the latest controversies involving Trump as well as the inauguration. Then a look at Trump's foreign policy. He is criticizing NATO yet again, but this time, even his own defense secretary pick disagrees with his future boss. Then, the brave new world of Trump and the media. Will he make the press his enemy from day one, or will he try to smooth things over? Good evening and welcome to RFL. I'm Richard French. All that and some breaking news that we'll get to in just a little bit. But inauguration preparations, they are underway as we speak in Washington. It is only 3 days from now. Hundreds of thousands of people expected to converge on the Capitol. But dozens of Democratic lawmakers will not be among them. The last count, it's now at more than 50, and they're boycotting Trump's big day. New York Congressman Jerry Nadler, one of them. Here is his explanation as to why.
I will not go to the inauguration on Friday. I cannot go because of the president-elect's inflammatory comments, his racist campaign, his conflicts of interest, refusal to disclose his taxes, and the last straw was his ad hominem personal attacks on an icon of the civil rights movement, someone who suffered beatings and almost gave his life for this country, John Lewis.
Congressman Nadler just mentioned John Lewis, and here is the Georgia congressman as well as civil rights icon.
I don't see this president-elect as a legitimate president.
You do not consider him a legitimate president. Why is that?
I think the Russians participated in helping this man get elected, and they helped destroy the candidacy of Hillary Clinton.
Now, of course, Trump did not take that statement without a response, and he responded, of course, via Twitter. Here's what he tweeted. Congressman John Lewis should spend more time on fixing and helping his district, which is in horrible shape and falling apart, not to mention crime infested, rather than falsely complaining about election results. Speaking of Lewis, he went on to say, all talk, 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 no actions or results, sad. Now, Trump took a ton of heat for that last portion of it in particular, as he slammed the civil rights leader who was bloodied in Selma, Alabama, on the very weekend that we were commemorating Martin Luther King's birthday. And all that happened as we get new numbers about our new president-elect. New ABC News Washington Post poll shows Trump's approval rating is the lowest seen for an incoming president in decades. Just 40% of Americans say they approve of how he has handled this transition. Compare that to the most recent presidents you saw there, including numbers that dwarf that, including more than double that, including Bush's, Obama's, and Clinton's alike. All right, let us introduce our panel right now. Two good friends, Dominic Carter, political journalist and author, Chris Shays, former Republican congressman from Connecticut. Now, Congressman, you served with John Lewis, and maybe his remarks, even he said maybe he wished he had rethought it. But there's one thing with sour grapes after an election. There's another thing, I would think, in demeaning the lifetime of a work of somebody who was there on the Pettus Bridge and was beaten and is really the living icon as it relates to civil rights
among friends?
Yes.
If you like Donald Trump, he thinks you're terrific. If you criticize him, he thinks you're a jerk. And that's the reality of the man. It's going to catch up with him eventually, because he's eventually going to have to go to John Lewis and say, John, I need your support. I would love it if he had called him up and said, you know, I wish I hadn't said what I said. I wish you hadn't said what you had said. I'd like you to come. But let me just say to you, when I got elected in a special election in '86, there were two people I wanted to meet, Ronald Reagan, who was president, and John Lewis.
Wow.
Those were the two. And John Lewis, because he had won a primary against a very Julian Bond, and it was workhorse versus workhorse versus showhorse. And that's what he was. He was a workhorse. And so to talk about talk is just silly.
And by the way, his district, not that this matters in the big scheme, is actually home to Coca-Cola. It's home to a whole bunch of major industries as well, so it's not accurate. But you can pick so many enemies, I think, and after a while it catches up to you.
It does catch up.
And Lewis, regardless of where you fall politically, and I think he, in calling an illegitimate president, you know, Yes, went too far, I think. He's going to be our next president. But nonetheless, there are certain times, and I haven't seen it in his toolbox yet, where the president-elect, soon-to-be president's got to take the high road on this. There isn't any slight he won't take the bait on.
When will he ever take the high road?
Well, one could make a case. I understand where John Lewis is coming from. One could make a case that maybe he went too far. Maybe, perhaps. But the onus in this situation is on the incoming president. You're the president of the United States. And on King Day weekend, a historic figure has a complaint about you. And instead of you picking up the phone and talking to him privately, you find a great need, Mr. President, to slap him publicly in the court of public opinion. It's beneath the office of the presidency, Richard. It should not have gone this far. The president is going to learn the hard way. He may get away with this for a while, but you can't, the president of the United States can't take on every critic, every criticism.
And also he lost an opportunity because he had a meeting with Dr. King's son,
Right, that's
and
right.
nobody talked about that because rightfully they were talking about the controversy with Congressman Lewis.
The irony is he needs Congress more than Congress needs him.
It will, and if you look at those poll numbers, my gosh, it's not on the margin here. And the way they break it down, I think there's a double whammy with the numbers. One is people have a very low approval of what he's doing. But when you look at the numbers, the expectations of people for what he's going to do for the economy, for what he's going to do for job creation, for all the rest, he better deliver on that too. And that's something you got to get lucky on, and you're also going to need the participation of Congress. But let me pivot to more than 50 some odd Democrats will not be on in Washington this weekend for the inauguration. And you're the perfect person to talk to because your good friend John Kasich didn't go to the Republican convention, the state of which he was governor, because of his major issues that he had with Donald Trump.
That's a little different.
It is. Part of me feels this is sour grapes.
No, well, first off, John didn't go because he felt if he went, that they would say you were trying to be on two sides of the equation. You didn't support him, you opposed him, you're not supporting him now, so what the hell are you doing in the convention? So he doesn't go, and then they criticize him. It is one of the most remarkable things to see the transfer of power. It's the greatest strength that we have. It's part of the Constitution. And the thing that's sad to me is if John respects the Constitution, which he should, and he does,
Yep.
And it's what has helped ignite a spirit of freedom since the 50s, then to go contrary to the Constitution is, I think, because you have to accept the verdict of the electorate, whether you like it or not. And one of the most thrilling things, and I always took advantage of it, you are up there when the new president is sworn in, and you're looking at the former president, you're looking at, and you're 20 feet away. And then what happens is the new president walks the former president through the Capitol. Usually there's a helicopter waiting. There always has been. Red carpet, they go, and they shake hands, and off goes the former president, and you say, wow.
It's
Now,
not just pomp and circumstance. It's important.
Oh, it's thrilling.
Yeah.
It's thrilling to see. Whatever it was. I mean, when the Democrats were saying goodbye to the Republicans were saying goodbye to the Democrats, it's thrilling because you say, that's the United States of America.
To me, Dom, I get why there's a lot of anger. I also think there's a reason that they don't have to freeze their, what's in Washington, and a couple are dying to make the trip, and there's still so much lingering bitterness and resentment. But it doesn't feel right because I don't want 4 or 8 years from now the same thing to happen, whoever the next president becomes. This shouldn't become our new normal. There's been too many new normals that we've seen in this election cycle, and we're going to talk about others, about respecting our profession and the press and how an administration should do it. There should be something where you hold your nose if you have to, but you show up, you sit in your chair, and you respect the process. I know a lot of people are going to give me a hard time for that, but I think they should be there.
I agree with you 100%. No matter where you fall on the political spectrum. A lot of this reminds me, Richard, going back to the contentious election of Gore and Bush in terms of when the Supreme Court declared the appeal, that was the end of it. Mr. Bush is going to be the president, and a lot of people said he wasn't the legitimate president. It has a lot of comparisons to me, because a lot of Democrats will tell you they just don't see Mr. Trump as the president. But the fact of the matter is, the American people have spoken. He's the president, whether we like it or not. I just feel, Richard, one more comment about the John Lewis controversy. There is perhaps arguably no one more important to the civil rights movement alive today than John Lewis.
But no close second.
And no close second. And on King Day weekend, politics is all about messages, perception. Mr. Trump already has a bad relationship, whether it's real or not, but a bad relationship with the black community. And on King Day weekend, you slap the highest ranking black official?
One last thing it proved to me, you may have seen guy Sean Spencer, who's the new incoming press secretary for Donald Trump. Sean Spicer, excuse me. And he's maintained that when Trump tweets, he doesn't do it in a vacuum. He consults with other people.
Well, that's sad.
That confirms that didn't happen. Nobody would have said to him, if you want to fire back with Lewis, I wouldn't have done it. I wouldn't have counseled him to do it. But you don't say at the ending, do nothing on Martin Luther King weekend to the greatest living civil rights activist still walking, let alone serving in Washington.
And that's what he should have said. He should have said in his tweet, this is the greatest living individual in the civil rights movement alive today. I'm disappointed he said this. I have great respect for him.
Kill him with kindness.
But he's not following the Constitution.
Right. So just if you ever wanted to be sure if he's tweeting in the dead of night or whatever he is on his own, I think that confirms it.
Yeah, they're not in his bedroom.
No. Well, okay. Quick programming note. We, of course, will be covering Inauguration Day live starting at 10:30 in the morning. We'll have, obviously, ramping up to that complete coverage. We'll have teams on the ground in Washington and getting reaction from scores of folks that are traveling down both for the actual inauguration and then huge protests that are also scheduled the day following as well. All right, coming up next. Trump comparing our intelligence community to Nazis. I cannot make this up. Going after NATO and putting Germany's Angela Merkel in the same category as Vladimir Putin. Well, Michael O'Hanlon from Brookings, he's coming up next to help us sort it all out.